Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have back here in the second half of the Goldstein on Gelt show, where we're continuing our conversation with Trevor Blake. If you missed the first half of the interview, just go to goldsteinongelt.com and you can listen to the discussion there. In fact, if you are listening to this show deep into the future, you can hear this interview as well as all of the interviews at our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and look up Goldstein on Gelt and Trevor Blake. Trevor, very happy to have you back on the second half of the show, and we were very lucky in the first half. You started speaking to us about the first step in your book, 3 Simple Steps. Would you mind sharing with us the second step?
Yeah, so first step is mentality. It's very important that the steps are followed in order, and it's a recipe. So I call it a map to success in business life, but it's actually a recipe, and like all recipes, I love to bake, so I like baking, like Victoria sponges and things like that. And if you put the ingredients in the wrong way around, you're going to end up with wallpaper paste. So you do need to go step by step. So step 1 is mentality control, because step 2 is about creating winning ideas. And this is one of the things I come across so often with would-be entrepreneurs, is that they say, I'd love to have my own company, I just don't have any great ideas. And then one day they have a great idea, and then they tell the world about it, and everybody laughs at them, and the good idea goes away. So you need that mentality control first. And then step 2 is about how do you put yourself in a position to have winning ideas. And there's a technique for this. And I stole this technique from Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, Madam C.J. Walker. As a late teenager, early 20s sort of guy, I was addicted to reading autobiographies of self-made men and women. And I started to notice these 3 behaviors that have become the 3 steps in all of their lives. And they all overcame incredible adversity in order to swim against the tide and achieve what it is they believed in. One of the reasons being they built this incredible mentality control, which you could also maybe argue was a bit of arrogance, but I think that's a good thing to have in business. And then the number 2 was they had a method for creating winning ideas, and it was incredibly simple. Like Henry Ford used to go back to his old farmhouse where he grew up, and it was a rundown farmhouse, and he'd sit in his father's old rickety rocking chair every morning, and he'd just sit there for 20 minutes, and what he was doing was transcendental meditation, but he didn't know that. He just called it his quiet time. And Carnegie did the same, and Einstein, all of these amazing people. And so as a young kid, I used to think, if it was good enough for them, at that time I wasn't a successful entrepreneur and I wanted to be one, if it was good enough for them, I'll try it myself. And I've developed over that time this technique I call it taking quiet time, 20 minutes in the morning. And that's where you create these brilliant ideas. You don't necessarily get them then and there, but you will get them in the following day or 2 days. And the reason is that we have these 100 billion neurons that are firing this 125 trillion signals per second. But most of the time we have to slow our brains down to an incredible crawl, really, to allow us to do things that we think are productive, like use my fat thumbs on my tiny little cell phone, or what I'm doing now to slow my brain down so I can interpret my thoughts as sound that I can exchange as noise that your ears can then interpret and make sense of it. All that is incredibly slow work for the brain. So the secret is, if you can find 20 minutes in your day, preferably in the morning, to do nothing. Just to sit. It's not a clever meditation. You don't have to sit on a pointy rock wearing a purple caftan or anything like that. You just have to take quiet time, 20 minutes, and just let your brain do what your brain wants to do. Work at full power for 20 minutes. And it's amazing what happens when you do that. It's that simple. That's why I call it simple steps. And I get more emails about the second step than anything else, because people's lives are just transformed by it. And it's remarkable and overwhelming because it's so simple. They haven't had to invest any money. They haven't had to, get fit or attend yoga classes or anything like that. They just sit in a chair early in the morning, 20 minutes, do nothing.
Let's just clarify so we get the technique right. This does not mean going to take a walk, and you're not talking about going to the gym where a lot of people say it helps them to clear their mind. You're saying just sit?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things are good things. I'm not saying it's either or. It's all those things are good things, but you just sit, do nothing. Just sit in a chair in a quiet spot of the house or car or outside, wherever you want, by yourself, and do nothing, and just let your 100 billion neurons do the connections that they need to do. And it's incredible. I've had amazing ideas come this way, as have other incredibly successful entrepreneurs like Daniel Loeb, who is on the board at Yahoo and is turning Yahoo around now. He's worth $6 billion or something like that himself. He says the same thing. He says all my great ideas come from sitting still for 20 minutes in the morning. And he's not read 3 Simple Steps, of course. Nor does he want
to. Has. You never know.
but this, say Ford and all of these people did the same thing, and it works. So if it works, why try to reinvent the
Right.
wheel?
That I'm a big believer in that theory. I will encourage all of the listeners to this interview on the Goldstein on Gelt show. Try it. A lot of times I find when you talk to people about whatever idea you have, whether it's this idea or some other idea, their knee-jerk reaction is to say no. They look for a problem with it, which really disturbs me. I always like talking to people who, when you tell them an idea, no matter how crazy the idea might sound, is they try to find a way to make the idea work rather than to try to find a way to put you down. So maybe everyone should try to find a way to take Trevor's idea of sitting for 20 minutes, find the time, and then tune in and tune back in and let us know on the show. So send me an email there and let me know how it worked for you, and I'll pass that on to Trevor. Trevor, we're now nearing the end of our conversation for today. I want to first again thank you for joining us both on both halves of today's show. One of the things that we talk about a lot on the show is how to help people improve their financial situation. And one of the things that you talk about is the problem with complaining. A lot of times people will complain about their situation enough that it gets them to do something. It makes them take some sort of constructive action. I don't know if it happens enough, though. Do you have a suggestion for people if they're finding themselves in some sort of financial funk, what they should do in order to turn their situation around?
Yeah, absolutely. I find what you've just said to be quite rare too, that people actually come out with constructive ideas once they get locked into complaining. The challenge with complaining is, as we said in the first part, the brain behaves more like a muscle than we realize. So if you hang around complainers for a period of time, you'll become a complainer yourself because your neurons lock into that and mimic that behavior. We have these mirror neurons that mimic everyone else's behavior. So it's a downward spiral. And the challenge with it is that when you're complaining about something, you're focusing on something you don't want. You wouldn't complain otherwise. You're saying you don't like something. And the more you say you don't like something, the more you're going to experience that which you don't like. And unfortunately, that's just a scientific principle that has been lost in all of this ridiculous new age stuff that we've had to suffer for the last couple of decades. And it's, you can prove scientifically that the more you expose yourself to something you don't want, the more you get that thing you don't want. So you have to recognize that and then make the shift. And with complaining, I'm afraid there's only one solution for complaining, and that's to break that connection. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing clever about it. You've just got to get out of the way. And if you're in business and you're surrounded by a bunch of colleagues who are complaining, get out of the room. Use an excuse, go to the bathroom, go outside, get some fresh air, something like that. And just for 5 minutes, just to break that connection, it's absolutely essential. And when you do that on a regular basis, it's like a weight lifts off your shoulders because now you start to think about what you want instead of what you don't want. And that's the secret to financial success. It's not, magic is not what we do. Magic is who we are. So it's changing who we are. So you've got to break that connection with complainers, and then you'll feel more like a free thinker, and you'll have more ideas, and you'll move forward instead of backwards all the time.
I'll tell you, that reminds me of something that I had learned 20 plus years ago, more, when I was in a yeshiva, a Jewish seminary here in Israel. And one of the main topics, which a lot of people don't realize that they teach you, is that you should not speak poorly about someone else. So this is the type of wisdom that your mother might have given you. Don't speak badly about someone else. But it goes beyond that, which is you shouldn't even listen to other people when they're talking badly about someone. And I think the same thing applies because it makes you such a negative person when you're looking for. And again, I'm not talking about positive thinking. I'm agreeing with you, which is just avoid negative situations. And I find when someone starts doing this, I instantly try to change the subject. So hopefully they'll either get the hint or we'll change the subject and not discuss it.
It's a great technique. I use it with my mother-in-law who's living with me right now, because she, typically she lives in a place where everyone's complaining about the health problems and the weather and all the rest of it. And when she arrives in our house, we haven't, when she arrives, we hadn't seen her for a few months. She just complains all the time because her brain is locked into that mentality of complaining. And my wife and I have learned over the years not to try to fight that because it makes for a miserable atmosphere, but just to completely ignore it and change the subject. And after 2 weeks, it's as if aliens came in overnight and they took out the angry old woman and replaced her with everybody's favorite grandmother. The transformation is remarkable.
That is amazing. I think a lot of the ways that you simply place yourself in society are the question will lead to where you will be successful. And one of the other things I've often noticed in my day job, I'm a financial advisor. I only get to do the radio gig once a week when I speak to interesting people like you. But the rest of the time, usually I'm working with people who are financially successful themselves. And one of the things that I have found about the most successful people who the self-made people in one way or the other, they always seem to be the most relaxed. They have the most time. They'll if I want to go to them for advice or discuss something with them, no problem. Their desk is clear. Their minds seem clear. It's the people who are constantly nervous and complaining and upset that are not the ones that are quite so successful. So I really do think you're onto something, and you're teaching some very, very important secrets to success.
Yeah, and ironically, people make the same comment about me about, they think I should be busier somehow. And they make, and it's not. I mean, it's better to use your brain than use your hands. If you get you get more time to spend with your family and friends and have a balanced life. Plus, you'll be more successful.
That's great. It is really fabulous advice. I want to encourage everyone listening to get a copy of the 3 Simple Steps. There will be a link to that at the show notes at Goldstein on Gelt. And Trevor, if people want to follow and keep learning from you, what's the best way that they can keep an eye on what's going on in your life?
If you go to the website, 3 Simple Steps, all spelt out, THREE, simplesteps.com. I have a blog for no reason other than it's a helping hand for those who are using the 3 Simple Steps, and it's good to know that you have lots of comrades out there doing the same thing. So there's a blog with lots of archive material, podcasts, and things like that.
Great. All right, Trevor Blake, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome, and thanks for the questions and the invitation. That was fun.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.